Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is we need to briefly share some points of the interview. We can't disclose any names, but talk about who you talked to, their children, their child/children, and what you found out. So I don't know about y'all, but the person I interviewed didn't have any children that like had any special needs or anything. They just had like a few children. So
yeah, me too. Mine didn't. She didn't have any children that had any special needs or anything like that. But she like knew.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Same.
The girl that I spoke to has a little girl that has Down syndrome, and then a little boy that, and she also has hypothyroidism, and then she has a little boy that's just younger, and she's pregnant again. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's a rock star.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
How old is the oldest?
So, I'm going to use the kids' names, but none of their last names as we're talking, just so that you can kind of distinguish them and you won't know who they are.
Yeah,
so her oldest is Ashlyn, and Ashlyn is 10, and she's the one that has Down syndrome. And hypothyroidism is also like a condition that kids with Down syndrome are prone to have. But she wanted to let me know that too. And then Harry is 5. And then she's pregnant again. So are we just supposed to kind of go through the what we talked with them about?
Yeah, I think so. I think we just need to like share some points of the interview, and then we need to talk about, like it says, after doing this interview, what's your sense of normal? And then we just, there's just like a few different questions. So I guess we can just each briefly share some points of the interview.
Okay.
And then, just go from there.
So I asked her about Ashlyn's development and in relation to kind of Harry's development, because that's what she had to compare to. So Ashlyn walked. She walked later, she crawled later, like everything was delayed, but she eventually did it. And so, and then her education, like as she's, grown up. So from birth to 3, they had early intervention in the home. And then at age 3, she went off to like a childhood education program that had kids with other disabilities, but also kids that were, very normal and just fine and, normal according to society. And she loved that. And then at 5, they recommended to put her into full special education classes. So she is pulled out to go to some specials like music and lunch. But her parents are really stressing. In fact, today she went and had an IEP meeting with the school to try to have Ashlyn put back into general education classes with a one-on-one au pair to help her, because she feels like Ashlyn's eventually going to be in society with people that are developmentally fine, and that if she goes through K through 12 just in a special education classroom, she won't have nearly the amount of skills that she will need. So she just wants her to be socially relevant to her peers. And at the same time, she feels like it's really good for kids in a general education classroom to have that interaction with kids that are different, because otherwise they never know, like they never figure out that there are different people in the world. So then we just talked about how with her specifically, it's really hard because they're also a military family. I live on a military post. So she has to redo everything every time she moves. So she has to start all over with the schools. you know, and they're moving every like 18 months to 2 years. So she has to start all over and get the teachers on board and get doctors on board. And so she's amazing.
Yeah, that must be really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could not imagine. That would definitely be very hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
She is a rock star. Dang.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's cool though. Well, I can go next. So the mom that I interviewed, she had 6 kids, but they're all older. Her youngest one is 20, and her oldest one is 38. And so none of her kids have any like special needs or disabilities or anything. But she said that with her first child, she did notice that she was slower in learning to walk and learning to talk and stuff compared to all her other children. But she recognized it before, like she could compare it to her other children. So like there was that delay. But growing up, she was fine. And then the only thing was in school and stuff, like 3 out of the 6 were born in Mexico, but all of them were just the only like special things that they did in school was they were in ESL programs, but they all got out of that. And then she was just talking about how she doesn't have anyone in her immediate family that has any special needs, but one of her nephews, he does have a little bit of a delay. And she said she didn't know exactly what it was, but her brother and his wife, the wife actually drank alcohol and stuff while she was pregnant. And so, of course, the child came out with some, like, problems. And she said that she feels like all children are normal. Like, no child should feel unloved or that they don't belong or that they're, like, super different or anything. And she just was talking about and really tried to focus on how they all have their own individual spirit. And her father, like, knows them and recognizes them like that. And so she was just saying how when her nephew does come, she, like, tries to, like, really care for him. And she tries to help him out even though she's not too close to him, like, location-wise. Especially because the 2 parents, they still do drink and everything. And so
Wow.
she's concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So for me, the lady I interviewed, her oldest child's 22, her youngest child is 15, and the youngest child, which is a boy, was the slowest at developing, and he had dyslexia. So I don't know if that's not like a huge like problem, but it's kind of like a something that's like a little more.
It's a learning disability. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so he was a little slower at a lot of other things. She talked about how some of her, like one of her children specifically, he was a lot quieter than the rest of the children. He was like one of the middle children because they had 4. And she thinks that was because like his older siblings talked more for him.
Yes.
And yeah, but then that same child who was quieter, he was the because like one of the questions was like, did you have any children that received any special services from school? And the third child was the one that had a special, was in the gifted and talented program. So I mean, that's not like a developmentally like
right
slow thing. It's more of like a on the other side of the spectrum. But yeah, she said that he's always like school's kind of really easy and things like that. And yeah, so that was just like a few of the things. She talked about how like because one of the questions was like in walking, talking, and teething, what were some of the differences? And she said how like it was interesting because like one of the children, he like teethed a lot slower than the rest, whereas like one of the children teethed like months before. So like one of the children was 5 to 6 month mark, whereas one of them was like 13. And so
Right.
that was kind of crazy. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see. The second question was, after doing this interview, what is your sense of normal and what does normal mean?
So I'll go first. She actually, I read to her that the idea behind the assignment was to deconstruct normal. And I quoted her on this. I'm like, wait a minute, I got to write this down. So she said, every child is normal, and their normal becomes your normal. And that's just your everyday normality. That's your life. You don't see it as my child is different, which I thought was really profound because, initially you would look at her and just watching her in church, Ashlyn's a handful. And, you see other families and, there's a difference there. But for her, she's like, this is my normal. Like, Ashlyn's my daughter. This is my normal life. I don't think of her as being weird or out of, different. That's just how she is. And so, it's when I look at my kids, they're all different. And, I've got some that have special needs too. But I really just like when I think about like their special needs, it's just what they've been sent to earth with those things to overcome. And my job is to just help them through it and learn how to navigate this life. So I think she's absolutely right. Every child is normal and their normal becomes your normal. So anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And even with like in families where there aren't children with disabilities or something, like with a normal family, like even if you compare those two families that don't have any disabilities or any special needs or anything, they're still like their normal to them is different compared to what this family is. So I mean, there's not really any normal in the end. Like everyone does their own thing.
Right.
That's so true. I think it kind of is all based on perspective too. So.
Right.
I mean, if you then I guess you are.
Right.
So that's super interesting, those comments though. I like that. Because I guess you wouldn't really know any different,
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. And I guess like us looking in, it's like, wow, that must be like super hard and like, I don't know how you do it.